how are you doing today? I am currently in Paris because it is summer. I'm finished university for the year. I'm free as a bird. My part-time job is remote. My internship is remote, so I can be based anywhere in the world. That's just a little background about what's going on in my life. I have a problem. I have been stuck in a reading rut for 2 months. I have not been able to fucking finish this book, The Prisons of Geography by Tim Marshall. This far of the way through, I have 100 pages left, I think, just over, like 130, and it is kicking my ass. There's a lot of things preventing me from finishing it. I think I started reading it when I was very busy with university, and so I found it really hard to start reading it. Secondly, I don't normally read nonfiction books, and I love the escapism aspect of reading, so this isn't actually my typical kind of book to read, and so that made it also a bit more difficult. Then thirdly, because the actual topic is all around geopolitics of the world, that's not necessarily something I want to be reading about right before I go to bed, and that is normally when I read, and especially in busy times in my life, that's when I have time. I'm so ashamed to admit that I have fallen into the biggest rut. It's been 2 months. I have actively chosen not to read rather than read this book, which is not a good place to be, and it just drags this painful process out. And now that it's summer and I actually have time, I'm like, it's time to get back into this. I love reading. Reading is so special and important to me. Like, I currently have 38 books on my TBR, like to be read list. The list keeps growing and I've not been able to tackle a single one of those books. So it's a lot of books. In high school, that was like my daily life. I would finish 3 to 4 books a week, super easy. But now, like, I have so many different responsibilities and so many different hobbies. First of all, I don't make the time for it anymore, and I also don't always have the time for it anymore. It's going to be a challenge, but I really want to get back into reading, and I really miss reading so badly. So I have 2 books that I have been wanting to read once I finish Prisons of Geography. A friend gave me an Agatha Christie book called The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. She's like the biggest Agatha Christie fan I've ever known, and I've never read Agatha Christie, so she was like, this is my favorite book, you have to read it, and she got it for me for my birthday. So this is going to be the first thing I read after I finish Prisons of Geography. And the next one, I've been dying to read this since February, is Stone Lined by Natalie Haynes, and it's like Medusa's story, a feminist rewriting of her tale, and it's meant to be really good. And I have been obsessed with Greek mythology for so long, and I've been wanting to read this book for like ages. I got it in this really cute feminist bookshop in Edinburgh, and I have been dying to read it, and because of this stupid fucking book, I've not been able to get to it. Anyway, those are my 2 first victims when I finish Prisons of Geography. But my goals for this vlog are for me to finally finish Prisons of Geography, and then for me to crack on with my new and very exciting books. And hopefully you will be able to watch the transformation of me becoming much more in tune with my creative side and much less frustrated, because I think this is, really been annoying me. We're gonna go to a cute cafe. I think it's 4 p.m, so our options will be slightly limited, but there's quite a few nearby. We're in a really lovely area near Montmartre, so it's kind of the perfect place for cafe hopping. So let's do it.
Country sway, the country sway. A golden sun on my cheek. The sky ends the day, the sky ends the day. I found the peace I long seek, and my legs rest quiet, my legs rest quiet. The sun
I am officially 30 pages away from the end. It is yet another day. We're getting there slowly but surely. I'm gonna go to another cafe today. It's called Café Contreceau, and I don't really know what kind of cafe it is. It looks very witchy. So looking forward to that. I thought might as well go somewhere where I can then purge my soul once I finish this book to recover. So I'm gonna go there, go work, go finish the book, and we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. This might be overly ambitious, I might even take another book with me to start if I were to finish this one. But yeah, I feel very optimistic that today's the day. I was like, reading 60 pages in quick succession yesterday and then just ran out of time, so here we go. I can't wait to enjoy reading again. Finally finished. I'm still so happy that it's done. The cafe I went to was really cool. It was definitely a very like witchy cafe. They did tarot card readings and there were all these like Wiccan books you could buy. So it was a vibe. It was pretty fun. The latte I had was blue, which I didn't think about. I didn't realize it was going to be blue when I ordered it. And I don't know why I have this thing around my drinks being a weird color. It's my own fault. It's my own fault. I should have asked. I was slightly put off because it was meant to be like a chai latte, an iced chai latte, but blue. It was interesting. That was an interesting experience for me. I faced some fears. The other regret I did have was I ordered a matcha cake and I didn't realize it had raisins in it. Another thing I'm not a fan of. It's unfortunate because when I looked at it, it didn't look like there was anything in it. And on the menu it didn't say like what it contained, and that's just on me. I didn't know matcha cake could sometimes contain raisins. I failed at ordering, but the actual experience was very lovely. And the best part about it was that I fucking finished this book. I realized I've been complaining about this book so much that I just want to like set the record straight. Like, I'm not against like the author Tim, and I'm not against Prisoners of Geography, the book. It's really good, really well written, and I definitely enjoyed it. But it definitely put me in this reading slump because I'm just not used to reading nonfiction for like enjoyment, especially like this type of nonfiction that's very geopolitical. Because of what I study, a lot of my degree revolves around politics and global affairs and policy, and so it almost felt like I was just studying or just continuing, like finishing a long day of university and then for enjoyment reading more about it, which I guess for some people that is totally what they do, but for me I like to have like a little escapism moment, and I think that's like what really held me back and just put me in such a slump. Like, I cannot believe for such a short book, it was like 300 pages, not even, like it took me I think 2.5 months to finish. It put me in the worst slump. It's fine, we finished it. I'm just really glad. I enjoyed it and I feel like I learned a lot, but I'm also really excited to move on to bigger and better things. I know a lot of people would be like, why didn't you just DNR it? Or why didn't you just start another book alongside it? I can't. First of all, I can't DNR things. Like, I physically can't. I have such FOMO because it's like, what if in the last 5 pages it was amazing and my whole life would have changed and I didn't read it? Like, that just terrifies me. So I can't DNR things, and I really hate reading things alongside each other. Like, I knew if I started another book alongside this one, it was never going to get read. Like, I would never choose to read it over another book that I started, and so I committed to reading it in full before starting another one because that was the only way I could ensure I finished it. Thus the very complicated situation in which I found myself. So the next book I'm actually going to be reading is one of the Poirot books by Agatha Christie. I'm really excited because I feel like this is like a fun little murder mystery. Get me back into reading, get me back into like the pure enjoyment of reading. I'm not even normally a murder mystery fan, but I feel like this is going to be something that's gonna be really good. You know, when you read something really intense and you just like need to read like a really stupid rom-com that like you don't even normally enjoy, you just need to read something fun and fluffy and light. That's me with murder mysteries, I think. That's kind of where I'm at in life, so I'm very excited. I think it's gonna be really fun. I've never read Agatha Christie ever, so it's gonna be a fun experience. Also, I want to talk about the weather. It's been so fucking weird. It was so sunny, such a lovely walk to the cafe, got there, went in, 5 minutes later it was pouring, like heavy pouring rain, and then I was like, I'm so scared to go outside. But by the time I left 2 hours later, it was sunny and really beautiful again, and it was like really hot, like I had to take my jacket off. So God knows what's going on, but it was very enjoyable, and the walk to and from was so nice. I had to go to Asian supermarket for some dinner stuff, which is like right behind the Sacre-Cœur, and it was just very vibey and beautiful. I really like the area there. It's really bustling and there's so many beautiful plants and trees and cute little alleyways, and it was just very lovely. So I felt like the world was celebrating with me this new chapter in my life. Anyway, I'm gonna go make miso ramen now, so bye. I finished the Agatha Christie book. I've never, like I said before, I've never read Agatha Christie before, but it was like a really fun read. Like, I felt like every sentence had a purpose, which I liked a lot. And also I just fucking flew through it. I finished it in a couple days after like such a long, draining few-month process of the other book. This was very refreshing for me, and I think I needed that kind of read to get back into the joy of reading. It was a bit predictable. I don't know if that's just because I'm a modern audience. Like, I think when she released that book, it was in the sense of like having an unreliable narrator. I mean, I don't want to spoil it if you haven't read the book, but having like that specific type of character, which is very common in detective murder mysteries, having that type of supportive character who's normally perceived as good, like then being actually the secret bad guy. I can see how back in the day that would be a bit of shocking if you've never come across that trope before. I don't know why, but like from like 10 pages in, I was already piecing it together, and I was like, oh yep, yeah, I'm guessing that it's this person. And then by the end it was just like fully confirmed. Like, I didn't always know fully how it was possible, but I was pretty sure this was the person, especially the way certain things were worded. So that was satisfying. Basically, it made me realize I should just become a detective. I didn't like the ending. Poirot suggested he kill himself. I don't know. I think it was like meant to be like an honorable thing, like, oh, it's more honorable to kill myself than to go to prison for this crime. But fucking hell, like, for him to be like almost guided to that solution by someone who you kind of trust and who's clearly a very intelligent man is, I don't know, different times I guess, but I was just like, that is fucking rough. Like, okay. Anyway, that was that. I don't know if I would read other Agatha Christie books, maybe when I'm going through another slump, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I definitely have some positive feedback to give to my flatmate who got me the book. And then last night I started Stone Blind, and the first, oh my god, wait, let me read this to you. Like, the first kind of preface thing. I see you. I see all those who men call monsters, and I see the men who call them that, call themselves heroes, of course. I only see them for an instant, then they're gone, but it's enough. Enough to know that the hero isn't the one who's kind or brave or loyal. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, he is monstrous. And the monster? Who is she? She is what happens when someone cannot be saved. This particular monster is assaulted, abused, and vilified. And yet, as the story is told, she is the one you should fear. She is the monster. We'll see about that. Doesn't that sound so fucking good? I love morally great characters. I love women receiving vindication for the abuse that they receive. I think this is going to be an amazing book. Anyway, that was my update. I am on track with this whole reading 2 to 3 books a week thing. Honestly, I will admit, it's been a hot minute. Update. I have now finished Stone Blind, and it was really good. Like, I really liked it a lot. I think the only thing I struggled with sometimes was the fact that a lot of the characters seem to have the same voice, like a very snarky tone, and I think it was more like just the overall tone of the book in general, like the snarkiness around what happened, like the fact that Medusa died for no good reason, was kind of killed by an asshole. She was kind of the victim in it, but was treated like the monster, and I understand that was the overall perspective and tone of the novel, but I feel like every person having a very similar voice or very similar tone of voice kind of made everyone a little bit homogenous. Like, everyone had their little quirks, their little things, but I did feel like it homogenized people's personalities a little bit, and I would have liked to see a bit more diversity in opinions and beliefs. But overall, it was a really good read. It was very funny in a lot of ways, which I didn't expect, and I think it's a really good retelling for exploring like this story from another angle, like the fact that she was taken advantage of in a temple by Poseidon, and because of that, she was then punished and given a head of snakes that could turn anyone to stone that she looked at. And like, why the fuck was she getting punished? And then she did nothing and yet again got her head cut off by basically this kid, you know? And so I thought it was really interesting, like investigating, like, was he really the hero? Was he just this bloodthirsty, crazed man? And I think like criticizing and assessing who's the real hero, who's the real villain in the story. Like there was such a good take, it was so interesting, it was a really great feminist retelling, and like I would highly recommend. I loved it, and I love Greek mythology. I actually just bought this book. I just got this. It's Greek mythology, but it's like a mini summary of kind of every important Greek mythological character, be them like gods, heroes, whatever, and it's in French. I got it in the secondhand bookstore in Paris and it was €1. I am now reading Babel. I'm not sure what is the correct pronunciation. I think it's Babel, but I'm reading that. It's such a cult fiction. I've had it recommended to me a bajillion times, and so I've just started reading that, which I'm really enjoying. I think I'm reading it on my Kindle and I'm like 20% through. I had a break. I went to South of France for a week, which was really, really, really nice. I started reading it there. And then ever since coming back, I've just been rushed off my feet with my internship and everything. And I got out of the really good habit of reading for like several hours a day, which was really fun at the time. I had so much time on my hands, and now I'm just like back into normal everyday routine, and I'm only getting like half an hour here and there to read like before bed. So I feel like my reading rate has slowed down again. I'm still learning what Babel is about. Like I very intentionally read nothing about this book beforehand because I wanted to be surprised, and I really love doing this because whenever something gay happens, it feels very organic. It's like, I know I didn't choose this book because I knew there would be gay in it, but I am incredibly happily surprised when there is, and I'm starting to get the inkling that there will be some gay in this book and between some main characters, and that's honestly pretty exciting. The main character has this guardian who took him out of China when there was like the plague, and he kind of saved his life and has given him an amazing life and is sending him to Oxford and has trained him up in all these ancient languages, but like the guy's fucking racist and sexist and awful and has terrible company for friends and does not respect this boy at all, has beaten him before, and it's kind of like, yeah, I think it's like humanizing this idea of like a savior or godlike person. It's really interesting. It's set in the 1800s as well. It's kind of like, it's like 1800s UK, but add a little bit of fantasy. Anyway, that's where I am with it. I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, it's been really good so far.
There is a life I lead in this city, hurrying to cut my teeth. I can take what I need to get by, it doesn't make it easy. The other piece of my heart moves slow, somewhere in the great unknown.
I'm super annoyed with myself because I went out with the intention of going to a really cute cafe and I was gonna work on my French, because I'm doing French studying every second day, and then I was gonna read, and I set aside like 2 hours, like an hour for studying French, an hour for reading, and I was so excited, and I went to the cutest cafe and it was so nice, and the weather looked shitty but it's actually really warm outside, and I was like, this is a good time to read. And then I got to the cafe, which was a 17-minute walk away, and then I realized I had forgotten my Kindle. Yeah, I was so annoyed with myself. I was like, for fuck's sake. I mean, I still used the time really nicely. I just decided to do creative writing instead of reading, which was actually quite nice. I enjoyed that. That was like, it was like fun and spontaneous, and I didn't anticipate doing that. So I still made good use of my time, but I still haven't read today, which is really sad. And I like have been reading a lot at home recently, so I was like, oh, I'm really excited to like change up the location in which I read. But alas, we'll be reading Chez Moi. That's okay. Sometimes actually it's comfier to read at home, and I'm slightly hungry, so I'm gonna have a little snack. I'm imagining some breadsticks with tapenade and chilling on the couch with the window open, a light breeze. It's like 6 p.m, so it's like early evening, kind of a nice vibe before dinner, just to chill and snack and read. But I still wanted to capture the like cafe I went to because it was really cute and I did like it, and everyone was really nice there. Although it was very confusing, like half the staff spoke to me in English and half the staff spoke to me in French, which was interesting. I was ready to like fully speak French the whole time, so yeah, I think honestly I get spoken to in English without even opening my mouth sometimes. It's kind of offensive. I'm like, do I just have an anglophone face? Like, why do people sometimes automatically assume I'm English? Like, I haven't even stumbled over my words yet in French. You haven't even heard me attempt. Give me a chance. It's a classic French stereotype of like, oh, you want to practice your French, but French people just speak to you in English. It's very classic. They're not doing it in like a cruel way, like, oh, your French is shit, let's just speak in English. Like they're trying to be like, I guess, helpful and like trying to make you feel comfortable, like, oh, let's speak in a language that you feel more comfortable in. But I feel pretty comfortable speaking in French, especially when it comes to like ordering and stuff. Maybe if we were talking about the philosophy of life, I would prefer to speak in English about that, or if I was having to defend myself against something that like put my life at risk, that would maybe be a better conversation to have in English. But ordering my iced matcha with oat milk, I can very much do in French. So yeah, it's always very sad. And I know my accent isn't like, I don't sound French, but my accent's not bad. So I know people can understand me. That's my random ramble. Back to books. Okay, 58% update. It's such a long book. It's much longer than I think I had like anticipated when I started, but it's so good. It's taken me a week though to get to this point, and I think there's a couple reasons for it. First of all, I've had 2 friends visiting, so it's been really busy and I've not read as much. Secondly, it just takes so much focus because a lot of what the book talks about is etymology, which is really interesting, and really enjoyed all the different connections it makes between different languages. And I think that's so fascinating, and I feel like I've learned so much. I've forgotten most of it already, but I learned so much. But because I was trying to like absorb that and focus on the etymology side of things and not just skim read it, it just took longer. And it really connects a lot to actually my degree, like social policy. We are encouraged to really critically analyze the current like structures of society, like free trade, capitalism, laissez-faire markets, and how this impacts policy and social policy. It's really interesting because this book is kind of doing the same thing, and it brings up poor laws, which happened in the 1830s, I believe it was introduced. It talks about how free trade is not really free trade, it's really just like, and in that time it's like really benefiting the British Empire, whereas what like China, for example, is getting out of free trade is opium, and that's obviously really bad for you. And ironically, opium was actually banned at that same time in England, and you were forbidden to have it. So it's like they knew that this was bad for you, but they were still willing to sell it to China for their own profit. Yeah, it's so interesting. And also how like knowledge is such a weapon, and arguing that it's not in these certain circumstances is just, you're either in denial or you don't understand how things work. But because a huge resource within this book is language, and having knowledge of different languages and what you can do with that, like the magic you can do with that, like with the silver working, which is a fictional concept, but it still tackles how language and knowledge of the world is a really huge resource and can be capitalized on. I also really like the contrast of the main character between being caught between, like, he has the opportunity to potentially just go along with this regime or to rebel against it. The book does such a good job of encapsulating how hard that can be. There are so many real world circumstances that this can translate to, where you have such a comfortable, nice life, and yes, theoretically you might be against capitalism, or you might be against certain wars or conflicts that your country is partaking in or contributing to in some way, but are you really willing to rebel to the extent where you have to give up your luxuries? It's such a good thing to reflect on. It's such an interesting question, because I think so many people are willing to fight for their values and morals up to a point, and then when it starts actually inconveniencing them or impacting their life, then it's like, oh, whoa, wait. Like, this character is flawed in this way. Like, he's not this like rebellious guy who he doesn't give a shit what happens, he's gonna go for it, he's gonna like do his best to save the world. Like, he's really torn between like just accepting how things are and like does not want to give up his life of comfort, his life of luxury, of stability, of safety. Yeah, in a way you can almost empathize with that point of view, because most people who would consider themselves activists would not actually be willing to give up their entire life or dedicate their entire life to the point where it impacts their own comfort for a cause that they believe in. This is a really, really, really long rant to say that I saw a lot of these real life parallels between the book I'm reading and the main character not wanting to like be an activist, low-key, but not really wanting to give up anything and being really shocked when he is asked to. Yeah, I think that's a super morally grey area. It's one that has many answers, right? There's no right answer, and I don't think to be an activist you necessarily need to be like completely giving up your entire life and all the good things that you have in it. I think everyone has different capacities and different things they can give to things. Unfortunately, there's been far less gay than I was promised. I think there's been like 2 tense moments, and I'm starting to fear it's one of those things where it's like alluded to but nothing ever actually happens, which is so often the case, specifically for queer relationships in books. It would be kind of disappointing if that's what happens. Anyway, I'm gonna finish this book. The next time you see me, I'm gonna be finished the book, I swear.
Feeling is all gone. Feeling is all gone. If I could take you back to my youth and show you what I wish I knew. My will is strong with a place to lean. In the moment I hung desperately. The other ring on my wrist is gold, pairing with the light it holds. When I return from my skin and bone, I'm remembering the words you told me. Wait, hold on.
It's like I bought lip ice and you're like, why are you buying lip ice? And I'm like, it's for hydration purposes.
Hi, are you getting tired of this exact position, this exact angle? Because I'm not, so. But there aren't many good places to put you, so you just have to go there, and that's all there is to it. I'm sorry. So I finished Babel. It was such a moving story, and there were so many aspects of it that I absolutely fell in love with, like the weaponization of knowledge, tackling Britain's colonial roots and how fucked up their like free trade system really was back in the day and how it is now. Even like so much of this can be translated to what's actually going on now and how it's still incredibly unequal, and ex-colonial powers and like more powerful countries are still profiting so much more from these free trade like deals going on than the actual countries providing the resources, providing the labor. So there were just so many similarities and a lot of geopolitics that drew a lot from my like personal interest and my degree that I'm studying, social policy. So in that sense it was really interesting, really powerful, and then also just the humane aspect of it was really great. I loved the dynamic of the 4 friends, and I found their friendship really believable, and I was really rooting for them. I was really fucking rooting for them. You really understood, like you could have empathy for each individual character of the friend group and understand their positioning and where they came from, and even if you didn't agree with them, there was I really liked that you could understand everyone's perspective and what influenced them. A modern masterpiece, honestly, and I learned so much from like the etymology, the little sections and all the footnotes and everything. It was really good. I think there were some things I struggled with, and I don't want to give too much away because I think it's a really good book and I highly recommend people read it. It's really long but really good. But there were some things, like there were some queer baity things within it that I just didn't like. I don't know, I just feel like I've read so many books where it's like hinting at something but not saying it in terms of someone being queer, and it feels a bit frustrating because there were other like taboo relationships that were tackled really head on, and it annoyed me that this wasn't, and it felt a bit like I was being strung along and they were just using this relationship so that the reader feels more emotional about certain things that happen. I feel like there was some like you know, they say show don't tell. I feel like there was a lot of showing sometimes, and things were like heavily hammered over your head like a billion times in like a very overstated way, and it's like, yes, okay, I get it, I get what you're getting at, I understood what you were trying to say the very first time, and now you've explained it, and then 10 pages later you fully stated it again. So there were some things where I was like, oh, I feel like this was unnecessary. I feel like we're reiterating previous points but in a more like flowery way. So yeah, there was a lot of repetition. Like the author was trying to have a continuous theme throughout, but sometimes it just felt like overly repetitive. And considering it was such a long book, I was like, I feel like this could have been cut down like 100 pages. But it was really good. I learned a lot also because the author tried to incorporate a lot of actual historical events into her novel. So I feel like I learned a lot about that period. Like, she had done a lot of research to make it as historically accurate as possible. So yeah, honestly, kudos, really loved it, really good. I might have also sneakily read another book in 2 days, because I told myself I was going to wrap this video up, and then I just never had time to actually film it. And in that period of me finishing Babel and filming this, I was able to read another book called The Penelopiad by Margaret Atwood. And it was super quick. It was 200 pages. I feel like 200 pages wasn't enough for the story, and I understood what she was getting at, but there were so many things I didn't like about this version of the Greek myth. Like, there were some things okay, the good parts. I really liked that she brought the 21st century in a way into Greek mythological times, like ancient Greek mythological times. I think she did a really good job of bridging that gap and drawing comparisons. It was really interesting, if not a bit jarring, because you don't necessarily expect the real world to be somehow connected to ancient Greece. She drew a lot on the perspectives of the 12 maids who were hanged by Odysseus when he finally returned after 20 years to Ithaca, and I feel like their perspective is one that just like fully no one ever talks about. So I thought that was really cool and very, very fun and fresh of Margaret. She did really good. But when like the way she actually tackled certain characters, like Penelope, the main character, I did not like how she portrayed her. In a way, it's like she humanized her a bit. It's like, well, she wasn't this godly, amazing woman. She was a woman who could be fickle and who could be jealous, and like she was turned into this very stoic like monument of chastity and sagacity. And you know, she was just a woman who had her own insecurities and issues and beliefs, and you know, not always being calm, not always being put together and rational. Like, that's super valid. But I just didn't like the voice of Penelope. Like, when she was 35, she sounded a bit like a whiny child at times, and I really didn't like that. She was portrayed as this person who just cried all the time. I didn't like it, and I didn't like how Helen was portrayed as this man-eater, when in a way she was a victim of circumstance herself. Because we're seeing this all through Penelope's eyes, it's obviously like an unreliable narrator story. So you are left to question how much of what she says is true and how much of it isn't, how much of it is her version of events, like the main character being Penelope. But there still does seem to be some like grain of truth in how like the author herself, like Margaret Atwood, how she perceives Helen, and the fact that she perceives her as this like man-eater and stuff. It wasn't my favorite portrayal of her. I've read much more nuanced descriptions and portrayals of Helen. Like, if you read the book Clytemnestra, I mean, Clytemnestra is based on Clytemnestra, like Helen's sister, but you see Helen a lot in there, and I think her portrayal in there has so much more depth and is so much more believable and nuanced, and you can see how she is both a victim and also a perpetrator of harm to others. You know, she legitimately is one of the reasons supposedly for the huge battle, 10-year battle in Troy. So yeah, but I think that tackled the issue so much in such a better way, and this just didn't do the thing justice, and I feel like it tackled everything at such a shallow level. This got super long. I wasn't even meant to read this book before the end of this video, but I left with so many opinions, and I felt so conflicted because I love Margaret Atwood, and I don't know if I'm missing something. Like, I don't know, like I was just like, am I being stupid? Because I have loved everything that Margaret Atwood has written that I've read so far, and I've read maybe 4 of her books. I think I'm just too much of a Greek mythology person at this point. I've read too many of them for me to be able to enjoy this. Maybe if I had read it like a year ago, I would have enjoyed it, but now I couldn't abide by it. I was there at like midnight reading in my Kindle I was there at like midnight reading my Kindle in bed, and my boyfriend was trying to sleep, and I was just like, oh, you won't believe what Margaret just wrote about Helen. Honestly, I think this has been really successful. I think the last few weeks I've read way more than I have basically the entire year prior to me starting this vlog. So I'm really grateful to you because you've held me accountable. I've followed through on my goal. Thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed the randomness of whatever it was. I hope that you're able to feel inspired to get back into reading yourself. Also, I know I forced myself to finish the book that was causing me so much frustration in the first place and put me in a reading slump, but do not be afraid to DNF a book. Like, yeah, just for your peace of mind. If you feel like it's really, really gonna put you back in a reading slump, it's honestly not worth it. It's just so hard getting back into it. Anyway, Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was enjoyable for you. Please let me know, what books are you struggling to finish at the moment? What books are you hoping to read this year? Yeah, also let me know if you disagree with any of my takes, especially the Penelope one. Also, I'm going to Albania for 3 weeks very soon, so hopefully you will be seeing some of that. It's a solo travel, so it's gonna be a wild time. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!